He was on Mad Money with Jim Cramer, pumping the stock of Axovant. Axovant was a dementia solution stock, an Alzheimer drug. It had already failed drug trials 4 times. And in 2015, he scammed the public, retail investors such as you and I, out of $2 billion.
Let's bang this out while we got time. So, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am delighted to be joined by the Butcher of Wall Street back on the show for a second time. Marcel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much, Josh. Appreciate your time, buddy.
No worries at all. So, diving right in, I've seen you talking about all this chat that was going around about an AMC dividend, and I know Adam Aaron has basically said that's not going to happen, or at least a cash one isn't going to happen. So there was a lot of talk like last year around the GameStop community where there was going to be the splividend, like the split dividend, and people were saying that was going to trigger a short squeeze and push the price into the stratosphere, and then splividend came and went and not very much happened. Why do you think AMC is different?
The GameStop dividend was issued was not done correctly, not done in the way that Ryan Cohen had anticipated. And I think AMC learned a lot from that. The thing about AMC is they're not currently able to issue dividends because of certain debt covenants that still exist on some of their bonds. They're 10%, 12% payment in kind, cash/toggle bonds. Notes that expire in 2027 are not fully paid off. There are some of the bonds that appear to have been paid off via Fidelity and such. When you try to purchase them, for example, or sell them, it's not possible to purchase them. They've been made position close only, meaning that I believe that those bonds worth around $55 million have been paid off. There was 2 of them that expired in 2026 and early 2027, but there are still other bonds that fall under these debt covenants. So those prohibit AMC from issuing a cash dividend. Certain people in the community have reached out to John Merriweather, the investor relations officer for AMC, and he confirmed that AMC cannot issue a cash dividend at this time. Why he said specifically cash dividend, I don't know. Maybe there'd be other dividends that would be possible to be issued, but at this time, that's still kind of speculation only, And I had speculated that because it seems that they've paid off those particular bonds that expire in November 2026, another one that expires in 2027, which were their highest interest rate bonds and the lowest rated by ratings agents that are no longer available for purchase on Fidelity or other brokerage firms. I speculated that they had been paid off and AMC would have the ability to issue the dividends, but that's not the case. You see what happened with sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but with the GameStop stock dividend, they basically issued, I believe it was a 1-for-4 or something along those lines.
Yeah,
1-for-4 stock dividend. And the way that it was implemented by market makers was not what GameStop or Ryan Cohen had intended. So it is not the same as a cash dividend, because in a cash dividend, the short accounts would automatically be debited and charged for paying for the dividend, which is not something that they would have an option to do, or the market makers would be able to manipulate. The broker dealers, for example, Schwab, Fidelity, etc., would automatically debit any shorts who were holding positions in AMC for the amount of money required to give each shareholder underneath their stock brokerage firm the cash dividend. And that's what makes it completely different from issuing a stock dividend.
Okay. So what would you not have considered the ape release? I don't even know what you call it, like the special stock that you don't count that as a dividend?
No, it's technically called a dividend, but it is not the same whatsoever, because it's a different stock entirely, opposed to AMC issuing dividends of its own stock, in which then there would have to be actual locates of shares, and then those would have to be delivered. It's a completely different issuance of a stock. And that was basically more like they took AMC, split it in half, and gave the APE dividend. It's not the same as going out and requiring cash to be taken out of the shorts accounts to pay for a cash dividend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. I guess we'll see what happens with it, really. But in more interesting news, the thing you sent me there before we started, where Citadel have been accused of, or sorry, not even accused, have been charged with marking shorts as long, which was one of the things that Dr. Suzanne Trimbath actually spoke to me about all the way back in 2 years ago, in June 2021, which is absolutely wild to see it. Like, you know, people who call us crazy or conspiracy theorists or all these, you know, random words. But I'll put a link in the description below. People can go and check her out talking about it for a couple of minutes. But the disgusting part, honestly, for me is how little the fine is. I can't believe how little they're being fined, isn't it? Whoa, 7 million for marking millions of orders incorrectly. Like, it's just like another expression of this bullshit system that we live in, where people can get away with this stuff just by paying like a small fee for making probably 10. Like, I can't imagine how much fucking money they must have made on those trades.
Yeah, you're right. As of today, September 22nd, the time of this filming, just a few hours ago, the Securities and Exchange Commission released new documentation on their website, and the SEC has formally charged Citadel Securities, the broker-dealer, with mismarking positions. That means marking shorts as long, marking long as shorts, and so on. So when a company does this, they're literally mismarking their books, which is the definition of cooking the books. So they're taking a liability, you know, saying they have, you know, just for example, $100 million in short positions, and instead of marking them as a short position, which would be reflected on short interest, they are marking them as a long position. So instead of showing a deficit of $100 million, they're showing a profit of $100 million, which is absolutely ludicrous. It's criminal. And if you or I did that and reported any information like that to, you know, different entities, one, we'd have to pay taxes on it, and two, we would probably go to federal prison as well. But instead, they get to do this, and the Securities and Exchange Commission literally stated that they did this for a period of 5 years. 5 years. And they marked millions and millions of orders incorrectly, and they only got fined $7 million. What a joke. And that's the system that we're up against. That's the system that we're dealing with. And that's why I always say that where we're going, we don't need an SEC. Where we're going, we don't need any SEC whatsoever, because they're not going to be the ones that help retail investors. They have no interest in helping anybody but themselves. So by marking these positions as long, it prevented Citadel Securities from ever being margin called and so on those short positions, because they were not properly submitting the documentation for Regulation SHO, and it's not reflective on short interest data. So if you look at the stock and it's showing, 15, 20, 30% short interest, none of those shorts marked as long are being reflected on that data either. So it's the definition of crime, to say the least.
Less than $1 per share marked incorrectly, which is wild. And actually, I'm really looking forward to next week. I'm speaking to a Forbes journalist, former management consultant, for the financial industry. This guy, Brandon Cockenden, who's written an article, you might have read it at some point. It's called "The Looney Conspiracy Threatening Wall Street," which basically suggests that naked short selling does not exist at all. Uh, what would you
What a joke.
Yeah, so right. But I have to go and speak to this guy, and he agreed to talk to me, and I'm going to try and
Yeah.
come at him with as many facts and actual things that I can. So, what would you say to that accusation that naked short selling just doesn't exist?
It's a fact that it exists. It's an absolute fact. The Securities and Exchange Commission has known about it for decades. There have been congressional hearings about naked short selling and the manipulation that occurs there. In 2008, the chairman for the SEC stated on video, which we've shared many times and multiple occasions, that they've done this and have come out and spoken about the manipulation that occurs on the stock markets due to naked short selling. So to say that it doesn't exist, it sounds to me like he's purposely trying to lie to retail investors.
Yeah, I mean,
Purposely. Anybody who knows anything about the stock market is aware that naked short selling is a fact. It is not something that is speculation. It's not up for debate. Oh, that is an actual factual form of manipulation. Hedge funds.
yeah,
And it's every single day. Every single day.
it's hilarious.
So unfortunately, I don't really know what you could tell the guy or how you could. I mean, there's a million sources out there and numbers of times where you'd be able to look up and see how many times the Securities and Exchange Commission has fined companies for doing this. You could take a look at all sorts of different sources in which Congress and SEC and FINRA and other major market players have come out and spoken about it. It's not up for speculation or debate. It is an actual fact.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the interview.
I think you're gonna roast the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never in the business of like doing like gotcha stuff, but
Right.
I want to have like an actual conversation where I go, look, okay, you've said this, but what about all of these other things that are pointing to, and all of these other facts pointing to the fact that it does exist, and just sort of see what
Yep.
his response is. I think it'll be interesting.
There's a
Uh,
really great video that was put out there by a guy that was put out on the internet, and it features a gentleman who is one of the largest hedge fund managers in the world by the name of Charles Gridante. And if you Google Charles Gridante GameStop, you'll see him stating in front of Citadel Securities employees, in front of mainstream media, exactly what happened with the GameStop situation and AMC situation in 2021 and how that was directly linked to naked short selling and the manipulation that occurred there. And there's no doubt about it that every hedge fund, market maker, broker dealer, prime broker, clearinghouse is well aware of the issues that occur with naked short selling.
really, stunning to watch people defend the system, and yeah. It's literally, and I reference The Big Short way too much on this show, but it's literally that the journalist that the two brothers go to at some point in the film, the Wall Street Journal guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna risk my career over this. I think it's literally that it's either they don't want to, or they're the block in their brain that would mean that their career had all been a lot like based on a corrupt and broken system just won't compute the fact that this is the reality.
Absolutely right. As a matter of fact, we just talked about Citadel Securities being fined $7 million for marking orders shorts as long for the last 5 years. And I'm looking at a tweet right now that AMC Bigham's put out today, in addition to Citadel Securities, the broker dealer. As a matter of fact, he says, and it shows here, it's an article from Bloomberg that says Goldman Sachs, the prime broker, the bank, agreed today to pay a $6 million fine for sending inaccurate or incomplete trading data to the Securities Exchange Commission, covering at least 163 million transactions over the last 10 years. This is nothing new to these guys. 163 million. Can you believe that?
Here it is. Here it is. I found that, so I can pull it up for people.
Yeah,
Wow.
great. That again, that's one of the world's largest prime brokerages, Goldman Sachs, who's over leveraged 103 to 1 on their derivatives. They, over the last decade, have committed over 163 million transactions, likely each single one of these containing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of shares or options per order in each one of these transactions. And they're mismarking the orders inaccurately or incomplete trading data in order to hide their short positions and to hide their liabilities. That's the exact same thing that the broker-dealer, Citadel Securities LLC, just got done being fined for again today, for having done the exact same thing over the last 5 years. It's not like this was just started yesterday or this is anything new. This is something that's been in existence since the beginning of the stock market, when they were first trading with, pieces of paper and shouting at each other on the New York Stock Exchange trading floor. The same thing, except now it's all done electronically, and they get to claim that they, without admitting guilt, they get to claim that it was due to a inconsistency or an error in their coding or algorithm, which is absolute nonsense.
Well, it's always the tech guy's fault, isn't it?
Yeah, they blame the tech guy. That's right. Yeah. But even the SEC stated in this release on September 22nd that SEC announced settled charges against broker-dealer Citadel Securities LLC for violating a provision of Regulation SHO, the regulatory framework designed to address abusive short selling practices, aka naked short selling, which you were just talking about, which requires broker-dealers to mark sale orders as long, short, or short exempt. These records are routinely used by regulators in policing prohibited short selling activity. And again, marking orders short exempt is a way for them to short positions when there are no shares left to short. All they do is illegally mark them short exempt, and bam, they've got another short. So it doesn't matter if it's on the uptick, the downtick, if it's on the Reg SHO threshold securities list. It doesn't matter if their share locates available or not. They just mark them short exempt if they want, and boom, there's a short position, even if there's no shares, to bring the prices down further. That's why people are so adamant about defending companies like GameStop and AMC and Metamaterials and so on.
Wild stuff to be living through, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, yeah, it's amazing to watch. Just it's like two-tiered justice really makes me angry. Anyway,
I think all of us.
Yeah,
all of us, man.
Anyway, the next thing that I wanted to ask you about was something that you have talked about, or you were sort of retweeting things about, was the border crossing video that came up from Eagles Pass in Texas yesterday, which I'm going to pull up for people here. Basically, and I know this is not the first time this has happened, but there's a lot of people crossing the U.S. border from through Mexico, but obviously, it's not, all of Mexico. There's people from all around the world trying to come through the southern border of the United States at the moment, fleeing
absolutely right,
or persecution or poverty, many things. Anyway, the Biden administration's plan that they've unveiled is basically to fast track processing at the border, expand legal pathways, increase the number of refugees. It says here, not sure about that, if that's the exact policy that they announced, but to send money to sanctuary cities and to speed up work permits for illegal immigrants. Basically, this has been going on constantly, and then yesterday, when the White House was asked about it, after claiming that the borders are more secure than ever. Where is the tweet about it? Yeah. So the reporter asked, what do you call it when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day? And they just dodged the question and basically moved on. It's like, what about when the Republicans do this, and then just move past it? What do you think is, because if you go back to like Obama videos from like 2012, 2009, the goal from everybody was, they all stated, we want to have legal border crossings. Like illegal crossings will not be tolerated. Like we want people to have a legal path to citizenship and living in this country if they want. What changed? And like, what do you think? Like, because I've seen a lot of sort of theories about why they're not policing this in the way they used to. What is your like perception of it?
Well, let me just start real quick by saying that I am part Hispanic. Both of my parents, I was born here in the United States. Both of my parents came to the United States from other countries. My dad came from Europe, the former Yugoslavia, and my mother came from Mexico. Both of them are and were citizens. My belated father was a citizen before he passed away, obviously. And they paid taxes and they worked and they paid into Social Security and Medicare their entire lives, right? So this isn't a thing of whereas, I'm being racist or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that I consider myself extremely blessed and lucky to have been born in this country as well, the United States of America. And I think that legal citizenship is a very good thing for this country. And it does bring, with proper vetting of people's backgrounds, it could bring potentially taxpayers and workers into this country to fulfill jobs that maybe Americans don't want to do. Now, how many Americans out there want to, be busboys and handle, lawn care and shit like that, or be roofing, whatever. If you want to do that, great. But the majority of people don't. And that's why there's a deficit of employees and laborers in those fields, amongst others.
Yeah.
But the way that the Biden administration is letting in millions and millions of people is literally letting in the worst of the worst. They are opening the borders. They are cutting down the barbed wire that the state of Texas has put up around the perimeter of Texas, around the border, and just letting people flood into this country. This, in addition, when these people come to this country, then the Biden administration is giving them workers' permits. They're giving them identification. They're giving them cash per month in cash. They're giving them free housing. They're giving them food stamps. They're giving them healthcare, free healthcare, on top of a plethora of other things. And what do Americans get? What do you and I get? What do our parents get? We get the ability to pay more taxes to fund these things for these illegal immigrants instead of getting any of these ourselves. We get to pay more taxes to send money to Ukraine. We get to pay more taxes to give illegal immigrants cash and health care and free cell phones and all these other benefits that none of us have ever gotten at any point in our lives. And the reason that this is occurring, in my opinion, is directly related to the fact that these people are being given these benefits by the Democrat administration. So they expect these people, because you don't even need to be a citizen of this country to vote in most states. They expect these people to vote blue because they're receiving free healthcare, free money. It's socialism at its worst. And this is coming from somebody who back, I think in 2016, voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, right? I wasn't a huge Trumpster. I haven't always been a Republican, but the Democratic Party has moved so far left that I now align more with Republicans than Democrats. And that wasn't always the case. So the issues occurring right now are huge. They want these people to vote blue so that the Democratic Party and the World Economic Forum can maintain control over the United States government and other European and Canadian governments around the world in order to maintain the status quo that they've currently got as the deep state, with maintaining control and people in power like Macron, Trudeau, Biden, etc., and other far left-leaning leaders in order to destabilize the family unit, as well as to bring cheap labor into this country. As we said earlier, the very few people actually want to do some of these jobs, and it provides them with more taxpayers, more free labor to come into this country. Because even if they may not be paying taxes now, the idea for them is, for the government, for the Democrats, would be eventually to give them citizenship, to give them socialist benefits, and eventually to make them pay taxes and get them to vote blue so they can continue to use their money printer to launder money through Ukraine, to install governments and overthrow governments all around the world, as we've all seen for decades at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
want to
that's as succinctly as I could possibly try to put it.
Yeah, I want to push back on one thing is that I don't believe that the Republicans are doing anything to stop it. Like perhaps Donald Trump is not part of their club, but aside from him, there are very few Republicans actually doing anything to stop. It's a uniparty. Like America and Britain, I think, suffer from this same brand of neoliberalism that we experience here in Britain. I think you guys have basically the same, where it's like it's a weird fusion of like faux liberal social and cultural policies, like fused with like claiming to be for free market capitalism, but really being for like state sponsored corporatism, whereby like money from the public purse is being farmed out to corporations in form of subsidies, grants, be like being paid to provide public services that would have like previously maybe either been run by the state or solely run by private corporations and regulated by the state. Instead, they just like the money just gets funneled to them with no bid contracts. I don't know if exactly quite works the same, but we have this system where like our public services are provided by private corporations, so we pay for it. The money like flies offshore. It goes through a bunch of shell companies, accountants, lawyers, everything. The money gets shaved off the top. And then when the money actually gets to the service they're meant to be providing, it's shit. It's horrible and not worth the money that we're paying for it. And it's all it is state sponsored fucking corporatism, and it really really bugs me because like people claim those right wingers are like the pro free market guys. I'm like, no, like there's nothing fucking free about the market. Like it goes back to the exact thing we were talking about at the start. It's rigged. It's a game set up for the the donors that are supplying both the Democrats and the Republicans, and in Britain the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, to continue with the status quo that they have, whereby they milk the system for every penny it's got, while our like pounds or dollars in our pocket become worth less and less and less. And you're actually maybe the guy to give like a really succinct explanation for this for me. I was trying to explain to people why printing money causes inflation, and I was struggling to like properly articulate it better than like, well, more money means things cost more, basically. Could you possibly try and like do a better job of explaining why the endless like printing of money and racking up the debt is making the money in our pockets worth less?
Sure. I will say briefly that I do agree with you. I don't believe that Donald Trump is part of the status quo with the Republican Party, and that's why even though I voted against him, I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but I also didn't vote for Donald Trump in the last election. But in either of the last two elections, but I wish I had. I'm at the point where come up 2024, you bet your ass that I'll be voting for Donald Trump, because I don't believe that he's one of the Republicans that just follow the status quo. That's why a lot of Republicans hate him, because they're a bunch of rhinos. They're a bunch of Democrats dressed in red, you know what I mean, or Republicans dressed in blue. It's the same thing. They're all basically a uniparty. They're all working together. They're all getting money from FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried and Citadel Securities and so on in order to maintain the status quo. And it is corporatism, like you said, basically fascism even, that is being used to funnel money away from the taxpayers and the 99% into the pockets of the top 0.1%. Now, money printing directly leads to inflation at all times. And that's because it is a Ponzi scheme. It is very similar to any pyramid scheme, whether you've ever heard of Herbalife or any of these others, or even like, I don't know, is it Lululemon, or like the women sell, and Mary Kay and stuff like this, where you've got a tiered system where everybody who sells underneath you or gets a percentage. Everybody who sells above you, you get a percentage of what they sell. And it's kind of the same with money printing. The more that is in existence, the less value that the current dollars will have. There's no real like easy explanation for it other than the fact that the value of a dollar is simply given to it by the trust that you and I and we the people have in the dollar itself. So in 1971 and in the past in the 30s, when the U.S. dollar was separated from being backed by gold to being backed by nothing but the United States military, it allowed our central banks to print an ever increasing amount of money. And that's why from the initial issuance of the US dollar to today, a dollar has lost around 98% of its total value. So that's why people always say, oh, this used to be cheaper and they don't make things like they used to. It's because as the Ponzi scheme grows larger, they need to feed an ever increasing amount of ones and zeros into the system in order to continue the fiat Ponzi scheme. That's why things like BRICS and the gold-backed dollar and trading in other currencies is a major threat to the stability of the United States as the world's leading superpower. So in reality, there is no simple answer as to why printing money is inflationary, other than the fact that it is a Ponzi scheme. In order to continue it, they need to have more buyers and more users of an infinitely increasing amount of money. So there's really no simple answer there other than printing more money for Ukraine and for illegal immigrants and for other countries around the world has to come from somewhere. The central bank prints it out of nothing in this form of ones and zeros on a computer screen, and that further devalues what we have. It's supply and demand. The more supply that exists, the less value that it has. And that's very similar to what's going on in the stock market with synthetic shares and phantom shares. The more synthetic shares and phantom shares that are created by the liquidity fairy, aka the market makers, the less value that a stock will have until a short squeeze occurs. Or in terms of a fiat currency, the less value that it will have until a new currency that is backed by precious metals or other physical tangible assets comes out and devalues the US dollar or other fiat currencies even further, such as the BRICS dollar and so on. So it's not a simple answer. That's why you find yourself struggling to come out with a succinct way of stating that those are facts, that money printing is inflationary.
I think you nailed it actually when you said it's supply and demand. That's the best way of putting it. Mm-hmm. It's like because there's more supply, it means there's less demand. That's probably the simplest way of putting it that I've heard someone do. I'm going to use that next time. Okay, so I've only got a couple of minutes left, just because I got to run and because our meeting's about to run out of time. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to get your thoughts on. So you've mentioned you're going to vote for Trump. 2, 3, 100%. 3 like quick fire ones. So what do you make? Do you think Joe Biden makes it to the election? What do you think of Vivek Ramaswamy? And what do you think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Joe Biden. There's nothing that could convince me that the Joe Biden that we're seeing today is the actual Joe Biden that we saw 10 years ago. Absolutely nothing. I have seen dozens and dozens of videos and pictures where you can clearly see that it is an actor. Some people believe it to be Robert Peters, and there are a couple others who are wearing face masks. You can see the indentations of the face mask sticking out around their ears. You can see it curling up in the back of his neck. And when you look at the guy, the earlobes don't match whatsoever. Joe Biden had connected earlobe to the back of his neck, and the new Biden has an actual like separated earlobe where you can clearly see it and clearly see a distinction there. And that's not something that grows or changes in people as they age. As people age, naturally their ears and noses continue to get larger until they die, but it doesn't create a separation in the earlobe as well. So yes, I think Joe Biden will make it to the election because it's not the real Joe Biden. I don't even think he's alive at this point. That's why they have no issue whatsoever doing anything they want because his legacy means absolutely nothing to these people. The Democratic Party is just using, in my opinion, Robert Peters or other actors in the form of Joe Biden to make it seem as if he's still in power or as if he's still alive, which in my opinion is not the case. Again, same thing's going on with John Fetterman. If you look at John Fetterman and pictures of him, it's arguable that there are 4 to 6 different John Fettermans out there. And that's just status quo with the Democratic Party at this point, and using clones or body swaps and doubles and so on for various reasons. Your other question was about Vivek. What was his other name? What was his last name?
Ramaswamy.
Vivek Ramaswamy is an absolute con man. He's an absolute con man. He has been in the past backing different companies that have really made people lose a lot of money and have made him a lot of money. I think he is a massive con man. Everything he's saying is just to try to get into an election, try to win the presidential election. But in 2015, I just looked it up right now, Vivek Ramaswamy scammed the public on his Alzheimer's drug that had already failed the drug trials 4 times before he bought it for pennies. The name of the company was Axovant, Axovant. He rebranded the company and took it public during an IPO. Then his family and Vivek Ramaswamy dumped $2 billion worth of stock before it failed again. He was on Mad Money with Jim Cramer, pumping the stock of Axovant. Axovant was a dementia solution stock, an Alzheimer's drug. It had already failed the drug trials 4 times. And in 2015, he scammed the public, retail investors such as you and I, out of $2 billion. He pumped the stock after it had already failed 4 times, IPO'd it, and then dumped it for $2 billion before it finally failed again, because they knew that it was going to fail a 5th time. But this is exactly who this man is. His family and him did this along with Jim Cramer on Mad Money. You can look it up for yourselves. It's called Axovant, the name of the drug, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about for yourself. This isn't the first time that he's done something like this, and he's simply trying to tell people what they want to hear in order to try to run as a Republican to prevent Donald Trump from winning, because we all know that Donald Trump is not part of the establishment. At least the majority of people do know this, in my opinion.
I mean, there's
that. And your last question, what was your last question there, brother?
RFK, what do you reckon? Because I think he's going to go for an independent run, because it seems like the DNC aren't willing to have him as a challenger. So what do you reckon?
I think RFK Jr. is a fantastic presidential candidate, but I don't think that he stands a chance. Simply because he has spoken out about the CIA and the FBI and the death of his uncle and the way that that's occurred. And I completely agree with a lot of things that he says. But without the backing of the Democratic National Party, he stands very little chance. However, I do love the fact that he's running, because hopefully that would take away more votes from Joe Biden, take away more votes from people that don't want to vote for Democrats but are still scared to vote for Republicans. Meanwhile, I think the majority of Republicans would vote for Donald Trump. Therefore, I actually fear for RFK Jr.'s life. And I think that he needs to be very careful because there are so many 3-letter agencies out there that don't like him, and the WEF, amongst other people and other things that he has openly spoken about defunding in the past, like the CIA and the FBI and such. So yeah, I like RFK Jr. a lot. I don't think he's part of the Democratic status quo. And I do worry for him. However, I hope that he succeeds in running for president in the terms of taking away votes from Joe Biden to allow a non-status quo president such as Donald Trump to win the presidency, because I don't think that the majority of Americans are dumb enough to fall for the bullshit that Vivek Ramaswamy is trying to say right now.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to become the nominee. Anyway, I have to bounce because, Britley gets started and stuff. So, Marcel, I'll put links for your YouTube channel and Twitter and stuff in the description. I was pulling up the fake Joe Biden photos for people to see while you were talking, so make your own mind up, people. And yeah, thanks very much, man. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun, as always, chatting to you.
I appreciate you, Josh. Thank you very much for having me. My apologies for the delays on getting started today, but thanks again. I'll be sure to share your video on my social media channels as well. You guys can check us out on Twitter and YouTube. Thanks a lot, buddy.
No worries. Hey, everyone. Thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.